Hello there, it is Lorna here, the occupational therapist, with the second part of our series on play and brain development. So I hope you found the first video helpful. If you haven't watched it, there'll be a link on this page that you can go back and have a look, and it's all about why we should play with our babies and why it's really important. This video is part two, and it is all about kind of sensory processing and a little bit about brain development. Now, what I'm going to tell you today is designed to be a little overview. It's not really a very in-depth training, but it's a little overview that lots of the parents that we work with tell us is really helpful to know. So I'm hoping that you find this really helpful too. So let's start with our sensory processing. And I'm going to share my screen here and share a couple of different diagrams with you. So let's have a wee look. So we have 8 senses that are working all of the time, and it gives us an idea about how we're performing and how we're managing at any particular time. And here are our 8 senses. So they work as a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle. We need all of the information from all of them to help us understand any sort of situation. So we've got vision, and that deals with not just like how we see, but how we process all the visual information that we get. It looks at kind of visual discrimination, so picking things off very kind of colourful backgrounds or picking the same colour off the same background, how we're able to discriminate the foreground from the background. Proprioception, which is a really fantastic one. It is about how we know where we are in space. So all of our muscles and all of our joints have little receptors in it that are continually communicating with our brain and telling us where we are in space. So it's telling you where your leg is without you actually looking for it. Now, in our babies, they don't actually have that information yet, but there's lots of activities that we can do that can kind of help them along with that. And if you're in our community group, go into the little search bar on the left hand side, you'll see an activity called Rub, Rub, Rub. It's a little video that I did that kind of does a little baby massage, and it's amazing for kind of helping our little ones with our proprioceptive feedback. There's lots of activities that we can do. And if you're in the village, there is a page on proprioception as well, so you can have a look at some of the activities there too. Hearing, when our babies are born, their sense of hearing is the most advanced one. It's the one that's intact, and we can't actually kind of increase our baby's ability to hear on the outside. And that's why they're able to test your little one's hearing from when they're born, put their little earphones on and get their hearing tests. What we can do is help them with the direction that sound comes from and processing different noises. So we always try and make sure that we've got kind of an auditory element into our activities as well. Sense of smell, we smell through receptors in our nose, and smell is really interesting because our sense of smell, the signal that goes from our noses to kind of our brain and to help us process it, actually goes through an area of our brain that is dealt with emotions. So that's why you can smell something and it brings back a really kind of strong memory for you, or it's kind of the emotional and the memory section of our brain that can kind of, like, so you can smell something and be brought back to the primary school, that kind of idea. On our bottom row there, we've got vestibular. That's our sense of balance. So our little ones need lots of opportunity to practice their sense of balance, not just with things like kind of tummy time and sitting, but also just being held in different positions, which gives them a bit of security and gravity so that they're able to kind of tolerate lots of different positions. Taste, well, that's when your weaning comes into it, and we'll have lots of conversations about weaning with Frances, our dietitian, over the coming weeks. And then we have interoception, and that's a really interesting one. That is how your body interprets how it's managing at any particular time. So it monitors things like hunger, thirst, the fact you need the toilet, that kind of thing. So interoception in our babies tends to work pretty well because they're not shy in telling us when they're hungry. And sense of touch. And touch, we know that our little ones now are touching a lot less fabrics and lots less textures than they were like 15 or 20 years ago. So your mission is to let your little one touch as many different things as possible. We know that babies who haven't been exposed to lots of touch are quite sensitive to it. So we want to make sure that your baby has had lots of experience of lots of different textures, which won't prevent them from crawling on different surfaces or eating different foods or wearing different clothes. So sense of touch is quite an important one. Then we have 3 baseline senses, as we call them. So these are the 3 that we kind of need to work on first in order for all our senses to kind of build on top of it. And that is our proprioception, so where we are in space, vestibular, that's our balance, and our sense of touch. So when we are planning activities with our little ones, we try and make sure that those 3 elements feature really heavily, and then we bolt on other bits. So we could make a activity really visual, but it also helps their balance where they are in space, and it gives them lots of kind of things that they can touch as well. So that's our 8 senses working together all of the time, and it's our mission to try and get those as integrated as possible. So that's our senses. So let me share a new screen with you. And this one here has a picture of our little one's brain. Let me have a wee look. Let's have a look. There we go. So here is our little baby brain as well. Now, again, this is just a very simplistic diagram that shows kind of the different areas of your brain that is dealing with sensory information, particularly at any one time. Obviously, each area of the brain is way more complex than I have kind of outlined it here. But with regards to kind of sensory processing, baby development, these are the kind of really interesting ones to know. So we have a frontal lobe, a parietal lobe, an occipital lobe, cerebellum, there's our spinal cord at the bottom, and our temporal lobe. And when our babies are born, their brains are full of brand new brain cells, but the neurons, the neural pathways, are not yet connected yet. So we haven't made connections between any of those brain cells or any of these areas. And our mission is kind of to try and get our little one to make as many different kind of purposeful connections as possible. So our baby's brains are making over 1 million new connections every second, which is just phenomenal when you think about it. But it's great to give them the opportunity of kind of doing purposeful play that helps them with different connections. So let's find out a little bit about what each of these areas is about. So our frontal lobe, it's dealing with our motor functions and our planning. It's dealing with reasoning, problem solving. It helps regulate our emotions and express our language. The parietal lobe is the purple one that sits just behind that, and that's really quite responsible for quite a lot of our sensory processing. So it's interested in touch, taste, smell, and different temperatures of things as well. Our occipital lobe sits just behind that. That's at the very back in the base of our brain, and that's our visual area of our brain. So it deals with our visual processing, our visual discrimination, and recognizing different things as well. And our cerebellum sits just underneath that. That's that little grey area, and it's dealing with our balance, our coordination, our rhythm, the proprioceptive, and the vestibular senses that we spoke about a little while ago as well. And then that little kind of dark purple area just down here is our temporal lobe. And it's dealing with speech, hearing, auditory processing, our behavior, our emotions, and our short and long-term memories as well. So again, very kind of simplistic way of looking at it, but it's kind of helpful to have a wee think about our sensory processing when we're looking at little baby brains as well. So let's have a wee think about an activity and the different areas of our brain that would be activated by an activity. So let's say links. We talk about links quite a lot. We love them. They're a single colour toy. They are great for texture. They're great for hand-to-eye coordination and great for kind of hand-to-mouth coordination as well. Quite a cheap and reasonably priced toy. We get ours from Bright Starts, and I'll post a wee link on this page that kind of shows you some of the toys that we're talking about as well. So the basic baby links that we use for quite a lot of our sessions and our little ones kind of love. So let's have a wee think about it. So our frontal lobe is active because we're doing lots of kind of motor functions. We're doing that hand-eye coordination. We're holding things for the first time. We are doing lots of kind of hand-to-mouth coordination as well. And it feels very different, all the different links. So it gives kind of them an opportunity of kind of practicing those motor functions. Just behind it in our parietal lobe, we've got our sense of touch, and we are giving that link a bit of a chew as well. So we're taking that to our mouth, we're feeling the temperature, we're feeling the touch, sense of touch of it. We now know that different links have different grooves on it, so they feel different. And it's a link is kind of an oval shape, so our little ones need to keep thinking about it depending where their hands are on it. Now, for our occipital lobe, it is a single colour toy, so amazing for visual processing because your baby is going to see the whole of the link in the same level of focus. So great for doing things like visual discrimination tasks where we pop a red link against a red background, and your little one will start to recognise them quite quickly. So lots of repetition can be really helpful here. Now, how are we thinking about the cerebellum? We're thinking about our balance. So is our little one doing it in tummy time? Are they doing it in sideline? Are they keeping themselves upwards? Are they coordinated when they're doing it? So can we use both hands? Can we give them 2 links to kind of help them with it? And can we have a think about where their body is in space and their sense of balance as well? And then lastly, we've got our temporal lobe. So we're talking about speech. So are you talking them through it? Are you telling them, oh, this is a link and it's red? You know, it's red, just like the color of the back of the blanket. just keeping talking to them and having kind of that normal speech pattern is really, really helpful. Our hearing, pop a couple of links together and it makes a lovely noise and we're able to process that. And we're also able to kind of think about short and long-term memory as well. So for our short-term memory, it's just that case of practicing. And for our long-term memory, we'll then start to recognize them as well and become kind of a toy that we're fond of. So for one very simple task, we are using lots of different areas of our brain. And if you think that all those different areas of our brain have our brain cells in it, when we are doing that one simple task, we are connecting the dots. So we're connecting those brain cells, and that is called a pathway. So our front area is dealing with that motor function, then it's going to touch, then it's going to our visual processing, then we're staying upright, so we're thinking about our balance, and then we're listening to it as well. So if you think about it, we are joining the dots, and that is creating a neural pathway. And we talk loads about why repetition is really important for our little ones. So when we've created that pathway, if you think about it, and the easiest way to kind of explain it and think about it is if we're thinking about pavements and roads. So the first time that they have done that pathway, it is a little bit like a dirt track. It's the first time that that has been created. The second time it might be like a pavement. So the second time they do activity, that signal will pass a little bit faster because that pathway exists. So we do it a couple more times and it's a little bit like a single track road. You know, it's happening a little bit quicker. And the more we do it, the more it becomes a little bit like a motorway. So that's why practice is really important for our little ones. Repetition is key when it comes to building baby brains. And if you think about it in an example that you can relate to for yourself, it is a little bit like when you were learning to drive. The first time we did it, you had to think of absolutely everything with regards to being able to drive. The second time, it was exactly the same. And over time, the pattern of your brain and the pathway that exists means that you can actually do that pattern of behavior without really thinking about it. You can actually do all those connections and the neural pathway is really, really strong. So I hope that has helped. There's lots of information there about baby brains and about sensory development too. And if you think about it in an example that we can relate to as adults, think about it as if you were learning to drive. The first time you were learning to drive, or you sat behind the wheel of a car, everything felt all shiny and new, and you had to think about every single task that you did in relation to driving. Second, third, fourth time, it was no different. And then the more you do it, the more things start to flow and become really natural. And before you know it, that pathway exists in your brain. And you're able to do things really, really fluently. So sometimes you get from A to B without actually quite understanding how you've managed to do it, but it's because that pathway really exists. So I hope that little overview has helped. Do let me know if you've got any questions. I'm going to be doing a Facebook Live in our community group tomorrow. That is on Thursday. So do let me know if you've got any questions that I can help with. I would be more than happy to give you a wee hand with them. And I hope to kind of catch up with you soon. Part 3 is all about kind of how to start taking the first steps with planning how to play with your little ones. So I hope to catch up with you then. And if you know anybody who could also benefit from knowing a little bit about brain development with their babies, please pass it on. I would love to kind of help them too. Hope you're well. Have an amazing day, and I will catch up with you soon. Take care. Bye.